Yo, what is going on YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at a pretty niche JRPG game that you are unlikely to have heard of, since a majority of the games have not been released outside of Japan. This game is called Summon Night 6, which is a tactical based game with anime-ish visual novel elements, and was developed by Media.Vision. After numerous delays, it was released worldwide by the publisher Gaijin Works. Like 99% of my reviews, no spoilers of the story will be given, and I will be as objective as possible. I have played one of the spin-off games, Swordcraft Story 2, for the Game Boy Advance, but I haven't played any of the previous flagship titles of the series, so I can't really say that I'm a fan. So let's take a look at this game. The story takes place in a new world called Fallujah, where things randomly just fall out of the sky. When the game begins, we are introduced to Raj, a native of the land. He finds two people, Hasaha and Magna, who are lost and have no idea where they are. Raj decides to help them with their situation, thus starting their adventure together. As everyone tries to figure out what's going on, the cast encounters more people with similar situations, and they will have to band together to figure out how to find their way home. Summon Night 6 has a very simple story and conflict. It doesn't try very hard with the twists or do anything fancy. Despite these flaws, I still enjoyed playing through the story, since a well thought out and deep story wasn't something I was really looking for or expecting. I still had many questions that I wanted answers to, and this pushed me to progress in the story. My biggest complaint is the pacing of the story, even though it did feed me enough to keep me invested.
Where have you taken Eoth?
There is a large amount of dialogue between story missions, which can take a while to get through if you want to see every interaction the characters have with each other. Of course, not all these interactions were interesting or important to the story. They did add tiny bits to their personality and backstory, but overall they can be skipped. When you do progress in the story, most of it is just finding new allies with the same repeated dialogue and exposition. Each exposition scene doesn't take too long, but when you have to see this every time, it gets a bit annoying.
A few minutes ago.
The large cast in Summon Night 6 makes the game feel more like a spin-off game than a proper flagship title, which hurts the story. There are 38 playable characters, but only Raj, Amu, and Iced are unique to Summon Night 6. The rest of the cast are from previous flagship titles. Having this large of a cast creates a problem for people who are experiencing this game for the first time. Since a majority of the characters have already been developed, there isn't much more the developers can do to really make them grow, as they already have so much history and resolve conflicts. This also prevents the story from creating a sense of mystery around the character, limiting my interest in them. We're introduced to people as they are found and given a very small tidbit of background through optional skits and dialogue. As a player that is new to the series, the game did do a good job of introducing the characters and allowing me to understand what type of person they are, but that's not enough. I had very little connection with the characters and often chose the main party based off appearances and weapons. Even towards the end of the game, I was pretty meh about all the characters. For those of you who are familiar with the characters because you've played any of the previous games, then my previous complaints should hold no water, as you already know all there is to know about them. This game is actually created for you in mind, as I can only imagine how much better the interactions are between the characters since you already have your favorites. Oftentimes in side skits, they would reminisce about the adventures they had in previous games, which would be lost on new players, but should be a fun skit to watch for those who are familiar. Something Summon Night 6 does well but doesn't do enough of is the night conversations, unless you do numerous playthroughs. During the end of some chapters, you get an opportunity to have night conversations with other members of your party. These conversations are more personal, so we can actually develop a deeper connection with the characters. It also helps build the in-game relationship between characters, which is really cool since it will determine your ending and also help you in battle. Now, I know I always choose Japanese voices over dubs, but that does not mean I think dubs are bad. With all that said, one of the biggest disconnects between me and the characters is the worst voice acting I've ever heard in a very long time. The voices are emotionless. It's like they're literally just reading words off a piece of paper, like how your English teacher made you read aloud during class in middle school. Take Raj for instance.
Wow, what a totally awesome development. We lucked out today, Patch.
Raj would sound the same whether he was surprised, impressed, happy, or sad. It was so bad, I felt like I could do a better job. Granted, there were a few characters like Borel, who seemed fine, but I'm not sure if that's because I got so used to the terrible voice acting that it set the bar low.
Honey, there are only two of us here, and only one problem.
Give you a hint. It's yours?
The saving grace of Summer Night 6, which prevented it from being one of the worst games of the year, is the gameplay. And I'm not saying that because I'm a huge fan of strategy RPGs. They have a well thought out and fun system that I greatly enjoyed. First, I just want to say the presentation of the combat played a big role in this. The camera movement during combat is so natural. I didn't really notice any awkwardness. The way it zooms in during attack animations or changes during the cool summoning animations worked very well. I think I might be one of the few people, or probably the only person who cares about the camera, but it really makes a difference. The character animation when attacking or ending their turn also looks really nice and simple. The level environments were also decently varied, and the same map was not overused during story missions. Okay, so battles. These follow the typical playstyle of most tactical RPG games. You have a grid made up of squares, you move your characters, perform actions with them, defeat your enemies, and speed determines action frequency. Nothing special so far. In terms of combat specifically, what I really like are the skills and summons, which are available to every character. Summons are used in a few different ways, but the standard focus is that they are essentially your magic attacks. You don't learn new magic by leveling up, but finding something called a Summonite Leaf, which is used to summon a monster that casts a spell. Things get more interesting with two additional summon mechanics called Summon Burst and Summon Assist. Summon Assist is exactly what it sounds like. You get help from other teammates within a certain range to assist you in the summon in order to increase the power of the summon by expending some of the assister's MP. This can include stuff like reduced MP cost for the caster, longer range, and increased power.
Let's go.
Then you have Summon Burst, which is like your epic Final Fantasy summons. Using this requires two characters and at most 90% of their max MP to call out a very strong summon that casts a big AoE spell. Pretty cool, right? The only bad thing about Summon Burst is that the spell also hurts your allies, so better get them out of the way first.
Enjoy this!
Skills are interesting because there are both active and passive skills that can affect the flow of a battle, and there are also unique skills exclusive to specific characters. For instance, some enemies have something called Zone of Control, which prevents you from passing the enemy, forcing you to rethink how to path around. Or consider Raj. He has a unique skill called Spur's Leap, which allows him to take consecutive turns and ignore jump heights, so he can reach certain areas faster than other characters can. Connect is another interesting skill I've never seen before, which allows you to have another unit follow you as you move, and also adds points to those characters' relationship. Lastly, Summon Night 6 also has something called Swap Out, which lets you swap an active party member with another who is not in battle. This is really awesome because it's a pseudo way of getting around the 8 character limit, thus essentially allowing you to find a use for more of your characters. Combining all this together in addition to regular attack skills creates a really entertaining and unique battle. Summon Night 6 also has a variety of options outside of battle that can help shape each character's growth to better fit the role you want them to be. The best thing, and very few games do this, is that a character's stats are customizable upon level up. You want a party full of glass cannons? No problem. Just put all your points into strength or intelligence and you're set. Classes will also play a small part in this, as they only give a small stat boost and determine the skills that can be used. Each character has 5 different classes with different skill sets, and each class will unlock after obtaining a certain amount of skill points, giving you a feeling of progression as your character wins more battles and gets stronger. The way the level up system is set is very unique and interesting. Rather than gain experience per action, after a battle is won, experience is put into a cumulative pool that can be distributed to characters that are still alive after a battle is over. At first, I thought this was a weird way to do things, but I actually ended up preferring it since it reduced the grind and makes it so you can level up your less used characters very quickly. Some maps can be finished in less than a minute and will net you millions of experience, which you can then distribute to whoever you want. In addition, there is a function called Party Skill, which unlock depending on the character Summonite Leaves you find. Party skills add a variety of benefits to your party, such as gaining a lunchbox at the start of each battle, stat boosts, or affliction bonuses. As you can see, there is so much freedom and options to set up your party however you like. The only problem? It doesn't matter. Yes, all these things are really cool, but they aren't needed. You can beat the game without any of these, and there's no endgame content hard enough to require this. Actually, the game in general is pretty easy. There is Endless Domain, which is a really long dungeon, but it isn't difficult at all. I just cleared the whole thing using auto battle, which is an amazing feature by the way. The issue is the game is just cleared way too fast, and there's no endgame content or challenges that makes the player want to continue playing after beating it. Of course, if you want 100% the game, you can replay the game from the start 50 times, but I prefer not to kill myself. That being said, there are other activities aside from Endless Domain that you can do. They just aren't designed for endgame. More of a, if you're bored of playing the story, do these things. You have Quest Dispatch, which is actually quite fun as it's quick and very fast paced. This minigame has you send 3 characters onto a battlefield to defeat enemies, but is different than normal gameplay. There's no grid and characters fight in real time. Each character also has skills you can use such as special attacks, buffs, and debuffs. Each group also has a leader which grants additional bonuses such as increased experience or buffs for certain types of characters. This was definitely a nice change of pace from the game as this doesn't require too much time and was fun to play as it also gives rewards not found during other parts of gameplay. It also added enough to make things interesting since I had to create a team with synergy but also could not keep sending in the same units repeatedly as their condition would deteriorate after each mission. Then you have fishing, which is mind-numbingly boring as it's super simple. You just repeatedly mash the same buttons really fast to catch fish. At the very least, fishing in other games you kinda had to pay attention. The soundtrack is decent, but nothing too special. There are actually a couple of tracks that I really like, which are the title screen theme and the battle theme. The title theme is actually very calming, and also seems kinda like a melody that is played for kids, but it works. It just fits with what's shown on the screen. The battle theme also fits very well. It's very exciting, fast-paced, and upbeat, which gets you set for the battle ahead. The other soundtracks have less of an impact on me. It's not terrible, but nothing really outstanding. So overall, Summon Night 6 is actually a decent game due to its great combat gameplay, but falls short everywhere else. Taking this into consideration, this isn't a game that will give new players a good first impression of the series, and it's probably a good idea to stay away until there's a big sale. Or if you really have nothing else to play, which might be the case if you're only looking for tactical JRPGs, then you should probably give this game a shot. Most characters lack any real development despite having tons of dialogue since they are already established from the previous games. The subpar story isn't great, pacing can be bad, and coupled with the horrible dub, this just isn't gonna cut it. There is some conflict in the story and it can actually be somewhat engaging, but that's only if the player gets through over half the game first. In addition, there is just no reason to continue playing after you clear the story as there's nothing to do. For those who are familiar with the previous flagship titles in the Summon Night franchise, this game should entertain you more than it did with me, as you're already familiar with all the backstory. But after playing through the game, I would still recommend waiting for a price drop to get your money's worth, as there's nothing you're really missing by not playing Summon Night 6. And that's the end of the review. If any of you have played this game, let me know what you think as well. Do you agree? Disagree? Have you even heard of this game? Let me know how you feel about Summon Night 6. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.